Greetings and welcome to another 15 Minutes of Flame. I'm Robert Phoenix, coming to you live from Austin, Texas, where fall has finally arrived, and with it, flash thunder, lightning, and rainstorms. The extended summer has finally left and gone south. Well, speaking of going south, every single day, every single moment, it appears that the Hillary Clinton campaign can't get any further south than it is or has. And yet something new comes up, and we're all just scratching our heads, wondering how and when the dam is really going to burst, and if it will burst in time for it to truly impact the election. And what I mean by that, not just from a perceptual point of view, but from the point of view or the reality that Hillary will be removed from the ticket. Now, it's looking more and more like we're lurching towards the end game here, which is going to take place theoretically on the 8th of November. Now, what's really interesting, and I'm going to try to go over a bunch of details here today and get everybody up to speed so that you can keep up with what we know, what we don't know, what we might know, what we will probably never know, but you should know. So here's what we've got. The FBI released thousands of emails today, most of which were completely redacted, meaning that we didn't get to see anything. Now, this is the difference between the FBI and WikiLeaks. One is theoretically transparent, although there are people who believe that WikiLeaks is a controlled fifth column, limited hang. I've had some feelings about that in the past. Right now, looks as though it is doing the job it was set up to do, intentionally or unintentionally. And on the other side, you have the FBI, who is more than willing to give us information when we bang at the door, but when we get that information, it's clearly illegible. Most of the important parts have been redacted and are unable to read. So, here we go. We're starting to get the information to come out, but it means nothing. It means nothing to us. So is this part of the strategy to release the so-called hundreds of thousands of emails on Weiner's laptop and then have it completely blacked out? Well, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? So here you go. Here's the... We did what we could. Under federal law, we really can't display the details here, because if we do, people will get incriminated. That's what happens. That's why we don't get to see it, because the court of public opinion right now is stronger than almost any court in the land. Because we know that the courts are essentially biased and are willing to do the bidding of the highest bidder or whoever's in power, and I can cite you numerous cases. Every now and then we'll get a decent court ruling, whether it's at a district level or whether it's at a Supreme Court level, but for the most part, don't count on the courts to be able to support the public. The court of public opinion has a much greater impact, for better or worse, and sometimes it's not great. But in a case like this, where we need information and it's vital to our being able to see through what's going on, a transparent, theoretically government, then it empowers us, the people, in order to make judgments based on what we know versus being kept in the dark by what we don't know. And those times are coming to an end. They're coming to an end. There's William Blake, and I've talked about this before. In William Blake, his model of reality is based on three phases: innocence, experience, and imagination. Now, one might say, well, we went through a very innocent phase in the 1950s, and then we went through an experiential, rebellious, adolescent phase in the 1960s, which theoretically could have led to a phase of imagination had we had the ability to take the rich celestial stuff of the 1960s and work with it and have it be part of a timeline that probably would have included John F. Kennedy, but that didn't happen. And so what happened is we got sucked back into a time loop, and we weren't able to move through experience into imagination. So we had to put that process off for a later period of time. Did it happen in the 80s? No, it didn't happen in the 80s. Why? Well, we had a lot of wonderful global events happen in the 80s. Live Aid, Farm Aid, all the aid started to happen. And then we also had, unfortunately, at the end of the 80s and the beginning of the 90s, the Gulf War. What about the 90s? Did we go through any kind of experiential psychic topography? No, not really. The 90s were an extension of the 80s, only there were people that made more money in the 90s because of the stock market, and then later the housing bubble. So we've been in a somnambulistic state since the 1970s. 9/11 comes along, and then what happens? We get shocked, we get traumatized, we go further into the cocoon of our own consciousness. And here we are now, 15 years later, as we approach where Saturn was, well, as we approach the opposition to Saturn in the 9/11 chart. Saturn in Sagittarius opposing Saturn in Gemini in the 9/11 chart. And it's been in the last 2 years, really, with an accelerated path in the last year, that we are finally awaking from our slumber, that the experiential energies that were stimulated during the 1960s are being activated once again. And look, it doesn't matter what community I'm talking about. Look at who was, whether you like Black Lives Matter or not, whether you think it's AstroTurf, and I think it's AstroTurf, it is echoing the same kind of radicalized experiential energy that was prevalent in the 1960s. Whether you like or agree with movements like Aslan or La Raza, again, activated. Just like the 1960s, the radicalization. And one can say, well, this is what happens when you get a communist president who's basically been trained by Bill Ayers, but it's also part and parcel of our time. There's another group of people that have been activated as well. Now, during the 1960s, you had white Americans on college campuses who were protesting, and they were participating in SDS, Students for Democratic Society, again, a group that was connected to the Weathermen, Chicago, radicalism. So a lot of sectors of our society were participating in radicalization and an awakening. There was an awakening going on. Whether you agree with the politics or not, there was an awakening. The military-industrial complex, war for profits. I understand where these people were coming from. And the problem is that the left came to power. And once the left came to power, they became as bad and if not worse than the right. Why? Because they were completely trained, educated, and ensconced in subversive tactics. And they were going to continue to use those subversive tactics while they were on top and part of the ruling class, which made them doubly dangerous. And this is what we've been seeing. But what wasn't awoken during the 1960s, during this time of experiential radicalization, weren't just the kids on the college campuses. No, they were there. A lot of their keys were plugged in and switched on, thanks to Timothy Leary and the CIA. But it was the conservative side. It was the silent majority, the people that patriotically supported the war, the people that punched Nixon's ticket, the people that saw this emerging culture and this emerging consciousness as a threat to America, and as a threat to their own personal sanctity. These people did not necessarily wake up, although many of them were probably fairly clear about what was happening. The difference between now and then is that that segment of society has also woken up. Now, some people might like to call it the alt-right. That might be an apt description. Some people might like to call them arch-conservatives. Some people like to call them radical, Nazi, fascist, white supremacists. And wherever you are on the political spectrum and your programming, that's where you're going to align. I like to think of these people as being clear people who have woken up and have been tired of being jerked around and jacked around. And there are a lot more than you might understand or know. And this is the other part of this radicalization that's taking place, part of the awakening. And it's all out there. Everybody has their slice of the pie. The social justice warriors have a slice of the pie. Feminists have a slice of the pie. The LGBTQ community has everybody's got a slice of the pie. Now, the funny thing is, there's plenty of pie. But what we really have the opportunity to experience now, if we're willing to go all the way, and I think that this is the time to do it, there will be no other time, is to have the X-ray vision to see into the corruption, the deceit, the manipulation, and the lies. They are all closer to the surface than we've ever had them before. Now, guess what happens when we get into these periods and phases of time? There's an event that knocks us back a peg or two. So we've got to keep our eyes open, our heads on a swivel, because this is that time. People around the world who are in the seat of power, they think that they can control this by managing the herd and putting the herd into a new pen, which looks like a new model of governance or new model for democracy. They think that that can happen, that they can just move us around psychically, emotionally, and in worst case scenario, physically. It's not going to be the case. I'm telling you right now. It's not going to be the case. Look, I spend a lot of time online, probably too much, but I do it to sift through layers and layers and layers of sources and information. And a lot of time I spend is spent on comments on message boards. And I'll tell you, the level of discourse, intelligence, irony, and humor in the comments section on many websites that are bringing these questions up are far smarter and more informed than they were even 3 years ago. A noticeable sea change. And this is what the powers that be need to be concerned about. They don't need to be concerned about Alex Jones. They don't need to be concerned about, I don't know, throwing a name, Matt Droids. They need to be concerned about the people that are filling out the comments on these pages. Because they're the ones that are awakening from their slumber. So let's go over what's happened over the last 48 hours. The FBI has released redacted emails. Clearly, not enough for us to get any kind of clear read on. The reason why the case was reopened late last week was because apparently there is a New York district attorney named Parikh Baharar who is supposed to be one of the toughest DAs in the country. I don't know. I've never had to deal with him. I live in Texas, and if he is one of the toughest DAs, I hope I never have to deal with him. This is the word on the street. He went back into Anthony Weiner's case, Weiner, and he grabbed the laptops because he thought that there was something more going on. He had been tipped off. And sure enough, once he got the laptops, he hit the mother lode. And this was through the NYPD. They found photographs, they found emails, they found enough evidence to send quite a few people to jail. And it's not for what you think. Although there's probably some of that in there too. On the Huma side, by the way, Huma Abedin missing in action. She is not on the campaign tour. Speaking of not being on the campaign tour, Michelle Obama, Barack Obama, Elizabeth Warren, they have all deleted their relationship to Hillary Clinton on Twitter. They don't follow her anymore. Robbie Mook removed all of his tweets. This is Hillary Clinton's right-hand guy, Robbie Mook. He took all of his tweets away. All the tweets that supported Hillary Clinton on Michelle Obama's site, Barack Obama's Twitter page, Michelle Obama's Twitter page, they're all gone. They're abandoning the ship. So here's what the NYPD found. I'll give you an example here. The NYPD found that Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, and a number of other people linked to a pedophile sex ring. Now, does that sound far out of the question? All you have to do is go back into the Franklin case. Larry Franklin arrested, had to do a grand jury. Before a grand jury, there was a congressman at that time, John DeCamp. John DeCamp was investigating Larry Franklin. It had to do with money, but eventually they uncovered a pedophile ring that went all the way to the White House. All the way to the White House. It's called the Franklin scandal. ABC News was going to do a report on it, and it got shit-canned. They didn't air it, but it went all the way to the White House. When we go into the Sandusky case, when we go into the Jimmy Savile dirty, sordid legacy, what are the common themes here? They're underage children. And it is a real problem. It's a problem because underage children shouldn't be exposed to levels of depravity or sex trafficking, but it's also a real problem for the elite. And for many of them, this is how they get blackmailed. This is why they continue to be corrupt, because the information is fairly ubiquitous and everybody's got shit on everybody else, and they all know that it's kind of like, it's kind of like game theory with the nuclear war. John Nash, A Beautiful Mind, he developed game theory. And his whole thing was basically, if we all have nuclear weapons, then essentially we're all canceling each other out. And that nobody would do the first strike capability because they would be wiped out too. It's the same thing. It's game theory. It just has to do with pictures that could ruin somebody's career in life. So there's a website called abeldanger.net, pretty interesting website. The guy that runs the website is a guy by the name of Field McConnell. And he put up a fairly salacious post yesterday. I'll read some of this just to give you a sense here. By the way, we're going to go a little long today. I dialed this up for half an hour today because there's so much to talk about. All the following information was given to us by our insiders who have specific first-hand knowledge of the Hillary Clinton email scandal. It seems that things are about to heat up. We were told that of the 662,871 emails lifted from Anthony Weiner's computer, that's a lot of emails, 11,112 emails are Huma Abedin's. And pay-to-play, including the Saudis and Israelis, meaning Huma was the one Hillary used to communicate with foreign leaders via email for inside information and deals via Huma's computer. It has been established through many avenues, but mainly through WikiLeaks, the Clinton Foundation was just a farce set up in order to perform pay-to-play games with multiple entities, including foreign nations. Pay-to-play nations include Israel, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar, Kazakhstan, and the Ukraine. Furthermore, we are told by one of our insiders that one email unequivocally confirms ISIS was created by CIA and Israeli Secret Intelligence, also known as ISIS, or ISIS with help from Joe Lieberman, John McCain, and Lindsey Graham. Okay, this is really, I mean, we're going to get into the X-rated stuff. But I was talking about this over a year ago when the whole Hillary email server scandal was erupting. That what they were doing is they were running a secret war through her computer, the creation of ISIS through her computer, through her server. It had to do with arms transfers, money transfers, Libya, taking Libya's stock of weapons, moving them through Saudi Arabia or Qatar and into the theater in Aleppo and other places in Syria for the quote-unquote rebels and for ISIS. And this is what was happening. This is why the server was breached, broken, dismantled. And by the way, all those emails, they're all part of the NSA. Kim.com said this the other day, and it makes clear sense. The NSA has everything. Everything. Now, does the NSA really want to spill the goods? No, what the NSA wants to do is they want to leverage it. They want to leverage the information for more power, more control, more money. They'll cut deals. They will cut deals. But that's where everything is. All right. We're clear about that. We're clear why this was happening. And if they go to the mat with Hillary, it's going to go back to the White House. It's going to go to Obama. Now, how do you feel, or how do you think the American public would feel if it came out and it was clear as day that Barack Obama, his administration, Hillary Clinton were the creators of ISIS? How about that? Not only would it come out about them, it would come out against one of our most favored nations, our friend in the Middle East. How about that? I mean, this is the Gordian knot. Here we are. We are at the same point where Saturn, well, it's Saturn in Sagittarius opposing Saturn in Gemini at the same degree. This is the last time it's going to happen with 9/11. This is 9/11-like material. All right, let's get into this a little bit more. An NYPD insider said the content that they viewed did include State Department top secret emails. One file was called Life Insurance. A second file was titled DNC Nuclear Arsenal. A third file, I'm sure Hillary definitely does not want released, was a file labeled Intimate. According to the NYPD insider, this file contained X-rated photos of Huma and Hillary with a teenager. NYPD detectives were sickened by what they saw, according to our insider, and they had threatened FBI field agents that they would leak this information if the FBI did not step up and take off the kid gloves. At that point, 13 of the FBI agents in New York City were also threatening to leak the information. As you can imagine, the scandal has the entire Obama administration in full panic. We were told there were emails that could send Loretta Lynch to prison, as well as Bill and Hillary. The Twitter post below, our sources sent us verifying it is all true. So there's more here. There's more. There's stuff on Jeffrey Epstein and Lolita Island. So this is kind of interesting. Here's some more information. Comey has clamped down on all FBI agents, and he expects a full-scale war between the FBI and the DOJ, the White House, and the State Department. He has confirmed and understands that many sitting senators, congressmen, lobbyists, and power players are going to be indicted and prosecuted. One of the main targets of the probe is the Clinton Foundation and Clinton Global Initiative. Among the targets under investigation are John Podesta, from the Abbott, Cheryl Mills, CNN, ABC, NBC, etc. As it turns out, Weiner, Huma's husband, has been forwarding Huma's emails each time she came home and left her computer open. Huma appears to have been in touch with Saudi actors, and therefore espionage is strongly suspected. Comey and his 40 untouchables are now preparing to take down the largest corruption ever witnessed in American history. I'll believe that when I see it, which is what I think must happen if Comey is planning to stay part of the FBI. He lost so much respect, so much credibility with the first Hillary investigation. It would take something of this magnitude to allow him to face the public again. The Pentagon has internal players and outside players they call creatives. Creatives are civilians who tend to be geniuses, malcontents, extreme hackers, or otherwise demonstrate brilliance in other useful areas. A Pentagon program called Cicada 3301, which we reported on previously, was created by several of these talented civilians. The program is now used to allow thousands of honest government people to report on their corrupt superiors using what is called a dead box whistleblower encryption method, so the non-corrupted government officials can report corruption and still remain safe. So here are some visitors, apparently, to Epstein's St. James Island. Ehud Barak, the Prime Minister of Israel. Prince Andrew, British royalty. Kevin Spacey, the actor. Alan Dershowitz, longtime friend of Jeffrey Epstein. So that's what's happening on the FBI front and what triggered the investigation. There's a couple more pieces. We've only got about 3 minutes left. Today's 15 minutes, the expanded 15 minutes. Steve Pieczenik released 2 videos and something he's never done. He said that there's been a coup and then a counter coup, a silent coup. It's worth viewing. Pieczenik, the man of mystery. You hear his voice on InfoWars, never see his face. Well, his face has been seen. He's decided to come to the public's attention at the 11th hour. And another piece of information that you need to know about, another kind of outsider, edgy, dark character, Jim Stone, who lives in Mexico. He's a journalist. He's an investigator. You can go to his website, look at Jim Stone. Apparently, Jim has stumbled upon a website called World Now, which is, it's not a website, it's a company, and they supply stats and graphics to all the news agencies as it relates to events, elections, et cetera, et cetera. And he claims to have stumbled upon the fact that they've already determined who the winner is. There's a web page up, a link up. All you got to do is go to Jim Stone's webpage, check out the link. I have the link on my Facebook page, and it lists state by state how many votes Hillary gets, the percentage, and they've already claimed her as the winner. There's a new Veritas video out right now, and it has to do with how the Clintons and the Clinton campaign view minorities. Unprecedented. These are unprecedented times. It is all bubbling, more than bubbling. It is volcanic beneath the surface. 2nd of November, the day of the Balfour Declaration, and the very first day that the Communist Party met in 1917 in Russia. Will it all blow? And will it all maintain its integrity before November 8th? It's Robert Phoenix, your extended version of 15 Minutes of Flame.
When you don't go to Geico.com, car insurance can be hard. Like early 90s heavy metal hard.
I'm yelling and screaming and I'm loud. Roar!
Geico makes it easy. You can review and update your policy or report a claim on Geico.com or the Geico mobile app. Because shouldn't we all have a little less stress in our lives?
I'm not even upset about anything.
It can happen to anyone. You're about to hit channel 81 to watch Animals Gone Loco, but you accidentally hit 811 instead. And just like that, you're watching the turnip growing marathon on the Farmers Network. And you're thinking, am I paying for this channel? Oh yes, you are. Thankfully, with Amazon Channels, you pay only for channels you want to watch, including premium ones like Showtime and Stars. No cable required. So goodbye, Farmers Network, and hello, Amazon Channels.